Hi, this is Starkie Sowers. Welcome again to another Nutrition Mission podcast brought to you by Clark's Nutrition Natural Foods Market. Today we're going to be talking about nutraceuticals. And nutraceuticals is kind of an odd word. It's kind of a play, obviously, on nutrition and pharmaceuticals. So what I want to do is kind of like tell you what those substances are. Chances are you might even have used a nutraceutical. For instance, Coenzyme Q10 is considered a nutraceutical. Ultimately, what is a nutraceutical? It's anything that's not a vitamin or a mineral that's part of a plant or a food or an herb or substance of that nature that has a biological function in the human body. All right, so let's take this a little bit further. Sounds kind of techy, doesn't it? By the way, I wrote this guy's name down just so you know it. That was Dr. Felice, and he's the one who actually defined what a nutraceutical was, and he's the one who coined the word in 1989. Nutraceuticals also, let's think a little bit different, are also known as functional foods. So let's give a little situation like this. Lycopene is a substance that we find in tomatoes. We also find it in watermelon. We also find it in guava. It's that red substance that you actually see that makes things red or maybe pinkish red, right? And so we actually know that lycopene has some really cool benefits. Number one, those are foods. It's found in there. You can obviously isolate it out. But ultimately what happens with these foods is we know a couple of things because of the lycopene content. It actually works very effectively in the prostate as well as in breast tissue and helping to prevent prostate and breast cancer. It actually helps to prevent the hormones that are so active sometimes from attaching to specific cells and activating them and morphing them into a cancer cell. So we know that lycopene is a very important substance that's stuck into foods. So now let's say we isolate that substance out, we put it in a capsule, and we've taken it away from the food, and it actually ends up being in a situation now where lycopene is a nutraceutical. All right, so a lot of times these are pieces of foods, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us through a little history on kind of where they came from and how they came about. So obviously in the 60s and the 70s and the 30s and 20s and all the way back, most people just had what we call superfoods. And so here's a great illustration right here. We've got brewer's yeast, and obviously from brewer's yeast we were able to obtain a lot of B vitamins. But let's just wheel this back a little bit. B vitamins actually go through a discovery moment. The first B vitamin doesn't get discovered until 1910. The last B vitamin gets discovered probably in like 1940. So what happened obviously is we're in the phase of discovering vitamins through the early 19 to the middle 1900s. And really, if you think about it, it's not that long ago. Well, before that, we didn't know vitamins existed. What we did know was this. We knew that certain foods might help you feel better mood-wise. They might give you more energy. They might give you more stamina. What we didn't know is what was in those foods. So if you take what I call the educators of the time, such as Ellen White, founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, you take like the guys like Paul Bragg and Patricia Bragg, they're running around saying, hey, get rid of the junk food, get rid of the refined foods, and eat all these foods that are so nutritious to us, like eating yeast and liver and all these other different things that are great for our health and blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like going, why would they be great for our health? Why not just eat white table sugar and white flour? It doesn't make a difference. Well, obviously, what we started finding towards the late 1800s, early 1900s, is nutrient deficiency diseases. For instance, lack of B1, thiamine, we actually ended up getting a disease called beriberi. Everyone thought this was a communicable disease. Hey, don't go to Joe's house. He's got beriberi, and you can get it. You'll lose all your muscle mass. You'll be skinny, and you'll be in pain all day long. Hey, I don't want to get that. It's kind of like COVID. No way. Well, chances are, you're going to not get it because it wasn't a communicable disease. What it was a nutrient deficiency disease. It was a lack of B1. So what had happened is the refinement of grains going from brown rice to white rice, going from brown flour to white flours, and taking out all these nutrients. We started discovering the vitamins that were there. People knew there were things in there, and this actually led to the discovery. Well, the old founding fathers of nutrition knew that there was something in there that was significant, and it was different. So that's kind of our founding notes. As time progressed and science started getting better, by the 1980s, we started seeing some very interesting things. We started pulling apart some of these vitamins and minerals. We started looking deeper at some of these superfoods and finding things that were literally hidden gold. For instance, like you look at cod liver oil, it's where we get omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids, now we know, not only help with cardiovascular prevention of cardiovascular disease, also when you use them on a regular basis, helps with mental alertness. We also know that DHA, which is in there, is critical for thinking, especially for babies in development. And mother's milk typically has DHA in it, more abundant if you're eating fish. Guess what? Cod liver oil that was being sold way back in the day, a superfood, of course, had the DHA in it and things of that nature, such as vitamin A, vitamin D, great for the immune system. A superfood. Now, all of a sudden, as I said, we pulled it apart. Omega-3s technically ends up being what we call like a nutraceutical. So now let's kind of turn the chapter a little bit different, as we were saying in the 1980s, as we're starting to pull these things apart. We started getting into this concept, a very interesting concept. I brought one of the books with me. It's called The Secrets of Life Extension, okay? So there's the Secrets of Life Extension. By the way, the guys who founded this and started this went on to create a larger company. And I brought the book that's by John Mann, The Secrets of Life Extension. One of the most famous book at the time was called Life Extension, was by Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw. As you know now, there's a publication that literally can be sent to your house. It's the Life Extension, so it's a science of health and life. And basically what they've done is they start looking at a lot of these nutraceutical or components that are there. So let's kind of go through some founding moments of the 1980s, what was going on. Not only was the discovery of omega-3s starting to become abundant by 1982, vitamin C as well as vitamin E as well as selenium. Lots of research being done on these antioxidants. So we knew about vitamin C, we knew about vitamin E. If you take in a little vitamin C, a little vitamin E, vitamin C, obviously if you have deficiency, causes scurvy, your teeth fall out, you basically bruise upon touching, things of that nature. 30, 60 milligrams a day takes care of the problem. Well, what about this? Linus Pauling, guy ends up with 42 PhDs or 51 PhDs, 2 of them that were earned, ends up getting 2 Nobel Peace Prizes, writes a book and says, hey, look, the cure for the common cold is vitamin C. Mind you, what he was saying, it wasn't the cure for the common cold, it basically reduced the symptoms. He also talked about using treatments, such as cancer treatments, using megadoses of vitamin C. Ultimately, what happens is he writes this book, literally gets ostracized by the medical community. Ultimately, what happens by the 1980s, everyone starts picking up the research and going, hey, check it out. Linus might be off on a couple of things, but he was right on the money with a couple other things. Number one is this. If you've got proper antioxidants in the system, it's actually going to do this. It's actually going to prevent the DNA from being damaged. Got to remember, 1980s, we're on the Genome Project. We're starting to do the discovery of our genes. You look at the Templeton Award, Dr. Christensen actually ends up getting it a couple of years ago for all the research that he did on DNA technology. And what we started seeing in the 1980s was like, we've got the ability to maybe change how we're aging. We call the project now genomics, which is like using nutrition to alter our genes. So the discovery or the advent of using larger dosages of antioxidants, we actually see a very paramount moment where these antioxidants are actually protecting the DNA, not only the cells themselves, but the DNA. And if you can prevent the DNA from morphing, you can actually prevent disease situations. So wait a minute, now we're really on to something. So they started looking at different things like at soil samples and soil situations with selenium. We find that areas that were deficient in selenium, we end up in a situation where they have more heart disease, more cancer, more skin cancer. All these different things start becoming attributes, and the explosion, so to speak, of antioxidants takes place, right? So one of the things that was very, very strongly pushed by these gentlemen was a substance that was called DMAE, dimethylaminoethanol. You take dimethylaminoethanol, it's a form of choline. And what it did is actually goes, when you use it on a regular basis, it literally kind of detangles the brain and excites the nervous system to be able to communicate between the brain cells. Oftentimes what happens is we age, we get aging cells, and what we know is those aging cells end up in a situation where they don't communicate and they don't connect. So they were using DMAE. A lot of DMAE DMAE used today is typically used for topical applications for skin because it tightens up the skin and helps to get rid of fine lines and wrinkles. So let's take another step and let's look at a couple other things. One of the things that was so popular in throughout the 1800s and as well as into the 1900s was the use of organ meats. We knew that organ meats actually helped with endurance and stamina. In fact, we've talked about this before. Liver tablets or liver pills used on a regular basis actually help with endurance and stamina and muscle tissue growth. Well, what precluded that? We actually had athletes in the 1920s and 30s that were going to the stockyards in LA and Chicago, grabbing raw liver, putting it in a blender with carrot juice and drinking it to improve athletic performance. Everyone goes, these guys are nuts. And finally they do some studies and they actually find with mice, ultimately what happened was this. They took mice and they put them literally in water. And first of all, they take group A and they gave them like a well-fed diet, put them in water, let them swim until they almost drown and pull them out. Group B, give them some vitamins and minerals added to their daily nutrient food supply, put them in a vat of water, and let them literally swim until they almost drown. And they went about 10% longer, statistically not significant. It's got to be about 25% to be statistically significant. So then all of a sudden, we take the next group, Group C, give them the well-fed diet, we give them the vitamins and minerals, and then 10% of their protein came from liver. So we actually feed them liver to see if this is going to help with endurance and stamina. So this guy, by the way, was at USC, takes the rats, put them in the vat of water, let them swim. Literally 8 hours later says, it's time to go home. I'm done for the day. Statistically significant, not only significant, off the charts significant. So what it did is it literally took all the athletes in the world, said, I'm taking liver. I'm going to use liver, and ultimately got like guys like me were using 100 liver tablets a day to build up muscle, endurance, and stamina and things of that nature. That was the protocol. That's what you did. So let's dig into liver. In the 80s, what did we start figuring out about liver? Okay, here's what we found out was this. There's carnitine in liver. Carnitine is an amino acid that is isolated. By the way, we'll talk about amino acids in a minute. So carnitine ends up being a shuttle. What it basically does is it takes fatty acids, brings it to the cell so the cell can use it as an energy source. No carnitine, no fats into the cell. Bottom line is this. When it comes to endurance and stamina, it's fats that help us oxidize and make energy for endurance and stamina. No carnitine, guess what? No fats coming in. So let's take this a little bit step further. We also know that every cell is fueled by what we call ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It's a high energy molecule. And what it does is kind of donates its phosphate and causes muscle contraction, and then it gets rejuvenated back. Well, the thing that actually rejuvenates it back is the storage of creatine. So if there's an actual ample amount of storage of creatine, we actually know that creatine, when taken in abundance and used on a regular basis, helps the body with endurance and stamina. One of the reasons why creatine is the #1 selling sports nutrition supplement to this day. All right, so we actually find that liver, of course, is abundant in creatine. So now, not only are we improving the oxidation of fats, we've also got the ATP shuttling, so we've got energy on a regular basis. Well, let's take it a step further. When we're making ATP, the rate-limiting step for ATP is coenzyme Q10. So coenzyme Q10, of course, is extremely popular as an extracted substance or a nutraceutical. And in the 80s, literally comes onto the market. They were doing research in liver and they found this coenzyme Q10, knew about it for years. It's the rate-limiting step in producing ATP. What's weird about ATP is this. When a damaged heart gets damaged from heart attack or things of that nature, ATP goes onto the outside of the heart, outside of the cells, and acts as a vasodilator. Then what happens is the heart's tired all the time. So what we found by using ample amounts of ribose, which I didn't bring with me today, but also coenzyme Q10, kind of actually helps to rejuvenate an aging heart situation. So going back to liver, that was one of the things that everybody used. So let's take it another step further. Here's a new substance that's out on the market. It's called PQQ. PQQ is similar to coenzyme Q10, and it works in what is known as the mitochondria. It's the powerhouse where we produce these ATPs. We know that PQQ is another substance, once again found in liver, that helps with the protection of the mitochondria and helping you have more endurance and stamina. So once again, these are nutraceuticals. They're pieces, literally pieces, so to speak, of foods that have been captured, brought out, concentrated, and bringing you to the market the exceptional version, so to speak, of these nutrients. All right, so finally what we'll do is we'll talk about amino acids. All different foods proteins that have any type of protein have amino acids in them. In the 1980s, this literally became an explosion moment. And in this explosion moment with these amino acids, what we're doing with these amino acids is we're actually feeding biological systems. For instance, let's take this. Let's take tryptophan. Tryptophan helps the body produce 5-HTP. It also helps the body produce melatonin. So adequate amounts of tryptophan not only helps you with the feel good, but at the same time also helps you sleep well, and also actually very effective in pain management as well. Nutraceutical, again, it's a piece or a part of protein. Let's talk about acetyl L-carnitine. Carnitine we talked about earlier. The acetyl version is the version that goes to the brain and literally ignites acetyl-carnitine ignites the production of acetylcholine, which is the mind and muscle and the memory mechanism in the brain. Another component. Let's talk about NAC. If you haven't heard about NAC in the last couple of years, it's kind of crazy. NAC is a cysteine molecule. It actually helps with the bronchial development. But the other thing is, it actually helps to get rid of mucus and actually helps the body in a situation when the lungs are impaired, and also helps with the immune system. Let's talk about GABA. GABA is amazing for anxiety control and also helping to calm the brain and shut it down. Lysine, one of the first amino acids that was on the market, works on fever blisters, cold sores, and the immune system. Very critical. Tyrosine as well, another component that works in that area of improving energy. So these are what we call nutraceuticals. There's a lot more. I could literally talk about this for hours. In fact, I can talk about it so much, I teach a college class on it at Huntington University Health Sciences called Nutraceuticals. If you want to take it, I'd recommend it. Bottom line is this. Clark's Nutrition, we've got all these substances there. Let's go a little bit further, some new information. Remember that DNA technology that I was telling you about? At the end of the DNA are what we call telomeres. We actually found that that's the aging cycle, so to speak. Those telomeres peel off as we divide the cells. There's only so many numbers that are there, about 420, about 120, right? We actually found that antioxidant use, as well as some of the other different things, actually help to increase or maintain that telomere health so you age gracefully and don't have the tweaks in the DNA. So come to Clark's, talk to one of the nutritional consultants, kind of figure out maybe what makes sense for you. If you want to read some updated information on a regular basis, I would recommend getting online, going to Life Extension, getting the magazines. We carry their products in the store, a great product to work with and have around the house and help you age at a better pace.